Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. It's your boy, Illeagle86, here with you and with my good friends Nerdbomber and Techtic. Today, this is the big one. We're going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal today, amongst a couple of other things. It's real and it's spectacular. It's here. You saw the same video we did probably if you're tuning into this, or maybe you didn't. If you didn't, you should pause right now and go watch the video. It's only 2 minutes long. It shows you a good amount of stuff, some of which we've talked about on the show before, some of which we haven't. So we'll get into all of that. We're also going to be talking about Until Dawn, you know, that spooky game that came out like many years ago. And we're going to be talking about Blue Sky, or as my wife calls it, Bluesky. So we'll get into that as well. But, you know, of course, the Nintendo Switch 2, the clear and obvious front-runner candidate for news topic of the week this week. So we would be remiss if we did not lead off with that. Now, I've been talking a lot on this show recently, I feel like, about just how much I love the Nintendo Switch. As a console, I've been very enamored with it lately. Its handheld abilities, its form factor, its eShop with all the cheapy little games that are all great. I would say in most respects, Nintendo is doing the smart thing here. And based on what we saw in this reveal video, they are just doubling down on a lot of that stuff. Now, some of the kind of top level notes from this, we talked, I think it would have been either last week or 2 weeks ago. It was fairly recent. We talked about some leaks regarding the Joy-Con being used as a mouse.
Confirmed.
That is a thing. That is confirmed a thing based on this short little sizzle reel that we got.
We don't know
no
what
real
it's
footage
going to do, though. I'm not sure what the functionality of that feature will be.
We didn't see footage of them being used in like a game, but we saw them zooming around like mice, which is as good a confirmation as you're going to get from a video like this, that they will be usable as mice. Another kind of top line item here, the whole thing is bigger. In particular, the screen is bigger by what looks like a noticeable margin, which I'm okay with that. You know, I do have some immediate questions and I guess you could say concerns about holdability, because I'm already kind of in the background here with my current Switch looking into getting alternative gamepads that are more ergonomic, because the Joy-Con simply ain't ergonomic. And if this whole thing becomes heavier, then I don't know how likely it is that I'm going to be able to spend hours on the couch playing it in handheld mode, as I tend to do a lot these days.
So the Steam Deck is, I think, slightly bigger and heavier. It's a beefy boy. It's definitely heavier for sure. And honestly, I don't really have that many issues with it. So I don't think that'll be a huge problem for you.
I'm hoping not. I'm not. Like I said, I don't know if I would even call it a concern. I'm not markedly worried about it. It is just something that gave me thought and pause when I saw how much larger it is.
Plus, you should look at it relative to the Steam Deck, because the thing that in my opinion, makes the Steam Deck a little bit awkward is the width. And this is sort of maintaining the more square form factor that you know with the Switch. Mm-hmm. And so I concur with Nerdbomber that if you're okay with the Switch as is, then you're going to be okay with this.
USB-C. It looks like USB-C on both the top and bottom of the console. Honestly, I maybe am misinterpreting that, but that's what it looked like
correct.
From the video.
Yeah, I think that's a new, because the current Switch already has the USB-C on the bottom. That's how it interfaces with the docking station. But having a secondary one leads me to believe that there's going to be some kind of accessory that they're planning on releasing that'll utilize that. Or they just have some other, maybe they're planning for, I don't even know. I was going to say another screen to have dual screen, but that doesn't make really a ton of sense. But there's got to be some peripheral that they plan on plugging in there.
I agree. I think that's astute. The dock, really the same. It has rounded edges. That's the only thing that they changed about the dock as far as I can tell.
But everyone loves a good radius, honestly.
Let's talk about branding for a second. The logo is being maintained. They're just slapping a 2 on the end of it. How do we feel about that generally?
I have no problem with that.
Are we okay?
How do you feel about
the
Xbox One, followed by the Xbox Series S, followed by the Xbox S?
I feel bad about that.
It's kind of no different than what PlayStation has always done, though. PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, PlayStation... it's fine. I have no problem with that.
Can I hit you with something, though? You can try it on, see how it fits. Because this is what I was probably unreasonably hoping for from Nintendo. My favorite of the, console generation naming schemes, it's got to be Game Boy. You went from Game Boy Color to Game Boy... Well, you went from Game Boy to Game Boy Color to Game Boy Advanced to Game Boy Advance SP. And then you went just fully switched over to Nintendo DS, DS standing for dual screen. I wanted something like that. Even if it was just Nintendo Switch Advanced, I would have been all about that. I think this is a minority opinion.
SA would have been the acronym, and
okay, it's a good counterpoint. You could call it. Wait, is NSA even better? I suppose it may be Nintendo Switch Premium. Then you're back to SP, and everything's groovy.
Yeah, that could work.
Nintendo Switch Premium kind of sounds like a streaming service, but
honestly, how they muffed up, like they went from the Wii to the Wii U, and that confused a ton of people. So I think just delineating it with a number just keeps it simple. Sometimes KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Don't call me stupid.
Was it? The general stupid.
No, you called me stupid. The listeners heard.
And now she's pivoting to calling us all stupid, generally.
You'll be judged in history for that. It's fine. I think I'm being needy here because like there was very little about this announcement to really complain about. The other thing that appears to have experienced some fairly drastic change is the rail system for the Joy-Cons.
That I have
is being replaced by a magnet, almost like you would plug in a MacBook charger back in the day, kind of thing. The chargers don't work that way anymore.
I was concerned about it, but as we're getting more footage and we're kind of seeing how it interfaces, I was concerned about the shear stress on that connector, but it seems like it's really well encapsulated in the screen housing, so you're not going to get any shear on the connector, and so I don't think it's going to break functionally.
But what about like a kid pulling, like it's docked and now the kid's pulling the thing forward?
I'm glad you brought up pulling. The thing that I was originally concerned about after getting that shear concern addressed was you're just holding it and just like being jerky while you're playing it, you pull the controllers off the screen and just drop the most expensive part, which is the screen and processor, right? However, in this latest showing, they showed that there's a release piston that is what pushes the controller off. Now, if it's just a push, my concerns still exist. However, if that push is done such that it engages some kind of a clip that's holding it and preventing it from coming out otherwise, other than just some kind of a magnetic force holding it, then I'm back with not being concerned and I'm happy. But I need more details on what exactly that push mechanism is doing when you push the release.
See, I don't understand. The rail system worked. I don't know why you would change it because it just functionally, I still have concerns about that interface. I just think that that's going to get broken. I don't know. It seems too frail. Somebody jamming the Joy-Con in at a weird angle, potentially just like chipping it off. I don't know. They'd have to really make that robust, and I don't trust that to be robust. And like you said, even now, the rail Joy-Cons technically have a button that you're supposed to hit in order to pop them off, and nobody uses that. You just jerk them off.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Sorry.
I absolutely. I use the button every time.
Yeah, I use the button every time.
I thought you had to use the button.
But I've watched my nephew, who is not an adult, not use the button.
He's using the button on the console. You can just jerk him off the stand because that doesn't have a button.
I'm not talking about the charging stand. I'm talking about the actual console. I've watched him not use the button.
But therein lies the problem with the rail, right? Because
I don't know.
Because if you're allowed to jerk off that easily, it's not locked in. It's not. And so I think as someone who's like thinking about like the quality department that's dealing with all of these issues, I think that they're having issues with it, and that's why they pivoted. It has to be. And the other side of it is to like line it up. Let's talk about the chargers on your laptop. Plugging in your laptop was easy and fine and no problem. Okay, but they added magnets to help line things up.
Can I give you a guess the devil's advocate, though?
Okay.
A laptop's intended user base is not a child.
And that's why the rail system needed to change.
Yeah, for what it's worth, the Apple magnetic charging ports, they moved away from it too. I don't know why they did. I also, Nerdbomber, to your point, don't know why they changed the rail system necessarily. Techtic may be onto something with the
I'm not saying that this is the solution. I'm saying that they likely had to pivot because the rail system wasn't perfect.
Here's my overarching thought with this is, at this point, in particular, considering how well the Switch was designed, I have I have no problem trusting in and believing in the designers of this console to have done the best thing for me. And, you talk about, the magnetic grips not being strong enough, the console just sliding out while you're playing in handheld mode or whatever. I guarantee you they've play tested the bejesus out of this thing, and that sort of thing is just never going to happen. How exactly that works mechanically, I couldn't really say. I'm sure we will find out. And
that's why my stance with the Switch 2 is I'm not going to buy it day one. I'm going to wait and see what the overall reviews are and the robustness of it. Because do you know who else is kind of a child? Me.
Nerdbomber?
Me.
Oh,
it's me.
I thought you were about to slam on Nerdbomber. The Joy-Cons. Sticking with the Joy-Cons for a second. Outside of the little control stick bays, just all fully black.
I think they did that because of the overall handheld PC gaming community. Things like
the Steam Deck?
Yes, things like the Steam Deck and the Asus handheld thing, and all these devices are that black matte color. I think they're doing that just to kind of fit in with the cool kids on the playground. And by the way, Switch, you are the cool kid on the playground. You didn't need to.
I'm back and forth on it because I think that the neon Joy-Cons kind of gave it some character, but I also, having recently been through this, found it very frustrating that obviously the original Switch comes with a red and blue Joy-Con, and we wanted to get 2 more, and we wound up getting another red and a blue one because the purple and green one, which is the one we really wanted, was more expensive, and I feel like that's a load of crap. So, in that sense, I kind of like the idea of just, hey, they're all black.
But I don't know if they will
I guess except
always,
for this little accent.
I think they will change colors. I feel like this is the one that it comes with, just like you said, the base one came with blue and red, but if you want a special color, they're probably going to charge you more. If you wanted a purple and green one for the Switch 2, you're going to pay for it.
And I guarantee you those purple and green ones won't just be the connection point. It'll be options where the entire controller is other colors. The thumbsticks are other colors. I mean, people, if you've seen, especially when COVID and the Animal Crossing era, people were going nuts with custom Switch modifications of hey, this is my personal Switch, and they had their little village and yada yada yada. That community is going to come.
It's very possible that they are just trying to produce a base product that maybe invites more customization in that regard to make your own console stand out in its own unique way.
It could also be,
which I'm certainly into that.
Maybe black was just cheaper. The more black on it, the cheaper the paint is.
Yeah, also could be true. As for games, we're hearing, I think, mostly speculation at this point about what the launch titles will be. What we more or less got confirmed for us by the launch video was a new Mario Kart, which is not really that earth-shattering. I think you could have probably pretty easily guessed that would be one of the launch titles. What I did hear about it, which is insane, is that there's apparently 24 player, which seems like too many players. I'm sure they have a plan for that, but
it'd get frustrating.
In the video itself, we saw, I think, just enough gameplay to it wasn't necessarily showing off the graphical capabilities. It was basically just saying, look, there's going to be a new Mario Kart. Here it is. And I think that's probably all it really needed to do. We also got confirmation that, I don't know if they said all Switch games will be backwards compatible, but I think they said most. And they showed basically the game card slot for you to put old Switch games into. So that feels like a pretty solid endorsement of backwards compatibility.
Well, they basically said everything except stuff I'm assuming they said there's limited things that won't be compatible, which I'm assuming the Ring Fit, because that relies on the rail system, and probably, I'm trying to think of maybe anything, because if you look at the new Joy-Cons, they kind of got rid of that, what was it, the IR sensor on the bottom of the one Joy-Con.
Right.
So probably any game that requires that won't be able to be used with it either.
Yeah, their exact wording. Certain Nintendo Switch 2 plays Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games, as well as both physical and digital Nintendo Switch games. Certain Nintendo Switch games may not be supported on or fully compatible with Nintendo Switch 2. So that's the deal on backwards compatibility. As far as when we're going to learn more, they said the Nintendo Direct for the Nintendo Switch 2 will be on April 2nd of 2025. Subsequent to that, there's also going to be a bunch of Nintendo Switch 2 experience events where basically people get hands-on demos. New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, Toronto, Paris, London, Milan, Berlin, Madrid, Amsterdam, the list goes on. Melbourne, Tokyo, Seoul, Hong Kong, Taipei. A lot of those dates to be announced, but most of those dates taking place throughout April into May, and then a few sprinkled into June as well. So yeah, that's kind of the gist. Techtic, you already kind of said this is going to be a wait and see kind of deal for you. One thing that we didn't get here, and certainly I wasn't necessarily expecting to get, is any detail on the price point. For me personally, that's a critical detail. If we are over $400, I am over it, at least temporarily. I think that's kind of where I land with it. Even 400 would probably be a pretty tough swing for me in terms of justifying the purchase. But I wasn't born yesterday, so I know it's not going to be a $300 console. I just don't think that's likely at all. So, Nerdbomber, where are you at with this?
So this is Techtic's domain. I am the procurer of, and not saying that this Switch is not a high-end console, but I'm the procurer of your like 4K crazy consoles, like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox. Those are the ones I like really go all in on. So I'll leave it up to him at his discretion. That said, probably want to see again how, the Joy-Con thing shakes out. And then probably if it's not super expensive. If there's a new Pokemon game though that looks dope AF, I'm in.
Did you hear that, by the way, guys? She said, hey, whenever he wants it, he could just go buy it. You love her. You gotta love her.
You really do have to. I do think that the launch titles are also going to force a lot of people's hands, and I'm speaking to myself here because, again, if Metroid Prime 4 is a launch title, which I have to imagine it may be, that's going to up the stakes for me quite a bit, and I'll have to do some soul searching there. But we don't have a list of launch titles yet. So I imagine at the Direct in early April is when we will get that information. I doubt we'll get anything super concrete sooner than that, but we'll just have to wait and see. So yeah, there you have it. Go check out the Nintendo Switch 2 first look trailer if you haven't already. Read Nintendo's very brief little press release about it, and overall just get hyped. And let us know what you're thinking about the Nintendo Switch 2, whether you're going to purchase it, whether this is going to be your first foray into Nintendo consoles, or if you're a Nintendo diehard. Hit us up on Bluesky to have a conversation. At Online Warriors is our main show account over there. We also have at OW Nerdbomber, that's Nerdbomber, at OW Illeagle86, that's of course me, and at Techtic.bsky.social, that is Techtic. So again, that's over on Bluesky. We are no longer on X. Let's keep the party going here. Let's keep things rolling. And let's talk about Until Dawn. Now, the news here is that we are getting an Until Dawn movie coming out April 25th of 2025, directed by David F. Sandberg, starring a bunch of people who you may or may not recognize. I don't know that many people are super recognizable. Peter Stormare, who played a role in the original game, is probably the person you would most recognize, and he appears to have a very small cameo-esque role in this. So we got a trailer for this movie, and the gist of the movie, to briefly describe, is it looks like the comparison I've seen made is it's going to be Cabin in the Woods crossed with Groundhog Day. There's a time loop involving a lot of scary situations. It looks like a lot of character deaths and revivals and deaths again, and really very little, if any, connective tissue to the game that theoretically should have inspired this movie.
That makes me really disappointed.
Yeah. The game, for those that are not aware, this is a game that came out many years ago. I think this had to have been, it was 2015 this game came out. So it's been 10 years since the game came out. This game, I don't know if I want to call it revolutionary necessarily, but the gist of the game was it was a horror game where you had to make a lot of decisions in a choose-your-own-adventure style surrounding a number of different characters, and the decisions would directly impact where the story went and also whether characters would live or die. And at the end of the game, depending on how many characters were left, you would get different endings with different levels of success, essentially. And, it had some very creative use of the PlayStation 4 at the time's motion controls in the controller. It used a lot of very famous people and their likenesses. Rami Malek was in that game. Hayden Panettiere was in that game. A few others who I can't think of right now. But as far as the core narrative itself, from what I remember, and Nerdbomber, I know you played this game too. I don't know if you finished it, but
there was no clock.
It was really there was no clock, and it was very simple. It was a very, I would say, classic, a bunch of teenagers go out to a cabin and crazy stuff starts happening to them. They get separated, and one by one, they get picked off by some supernatural, some less supernatural entities that I won't really get into in case you want to go play this game. I'm sure if you wanted to go play this game right now, it probably costs like $5 to get it on the PlayStation Store or something. And I would recommend that because it's very, very fun. I think even today probably holds up as very unique. And all of those things lead me to see this trailer, which I should say has some things going for it, but overall for me was very frustrating to watch because it's
Just call it
I
something
don't know
else. Well, I know what happened
exactly.
Here. So one of the things that people took away from Until Dawn at the end of people's playthroughs, especially when like it was big on Twitch for a little bit of time, or even I believe when like you and I played it, I think it read out the statistics of like what your decisions were and how many people got the same ending or the same characters lived to the end. And so people then replayed it to try to get different endings. And I think that is what Sony appears to have taken away from the experience. But I think that's kind of sad. Like the playthrough,
which is crazy
I get
to me,
it's trying to be
I
like
played it once.
Right. Like it's trying to
I mean,
be a meta statement on how people play video games that have elements of decision. And I understand what they're trying to do there. But I think the story itself was good enough to kind of stand on its own. And I feel like you could have made that connection, connecting like player's choice into the movie in a different manner while still maintaining the core storytelling of the game. And I felt like for me specifically, I'm not going to say the name of the creature, A, for spoiler reasons, but also B, because, you know, mythology, you don't want to put that bad juju in the world. But it did send me down a path of researching that side of like mythology and horror elements. And I feel
Is this a Wendigo thing?
Oh my goodness. He just said it. Okay.
He said the name.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. I had very little exposure previously to that piece of lore. And I didn't necessarily do a deep dive into research after it, but it was a cool way to be exposed to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that this, you know, I referred to the story as classic before. Like, I think it also, and like you said, I played this well after it had come out. I probably played it in, if I were to guess, I would say 2018. So it had been out for a couple of years at that point. It had a very retro feel to it. Again, in the sense that like it's a bunch of teenagers at a cabin. They're all couples. Everyone's horny. They're just like trying to bone, and then like they start dying. Like it had very like classic 70s horror movie vibes to it. And it's very hard for me to watch the trailer for this and see the same sort of energy.
No one was
boning. By the way,
no one.
Well, and by the way, Cabin in the Woods, which was a very, very successful horror movie that this movie is clearly drawing inspiration from, did have that vibe to it. It applied the same principle of like, this is going to be a classic retro horror movie setup, and then we're going to do something creative with it. That's clearly what the intent of this movie is. I question whether they will be able to hit that target. And I also, in particular, question whether, even if they do hit that target, it will be more satisfying than what the story of the original game was, which was pretty classic, but also did have some interesting narrative twists. So I don't want to come down too hard on this. You know, I think that, like I said, I think the trailer does have a decent amount of things going for it. I think the time loop thing has been very popular lately in movies, and for good reason. I think we've seen movies like Happy Death Day that have been really successful in taking that time loop and applying it to horror. So I think this can do a lot of the same things, but that's also to its detriment. Is it going to be too readily compared to that? I think it's now a franchise. I don't know. It comes out April 25th. They should have called it something else. I do agree with that kind of overarching point. I don't know what you call it, but Until Dawn, this is not. And I haven't really seen what the response is like on social media or like on the YouTube comments or anything, but I have to imagine that most people that have played the game feel the same way, because the game was pretty well received. And, you know, the other kind of overarching point with this is we've talked very much recently about, you know, with the success of The Last of Us and other, you know, game-based media franchises trying to launch themselves. The Last of Us was, I think, in at least some part successful because it stayed true to the source material and it trusted in the depth and quality of the story of the game that it was taking from. I don't understand why someone would come along and basically say, we're going to make a movie based on a video game and we're going to not do that. It kind of blows my mind. And I kind of have this thought that we're trending towards people taking video game stories more seriously when they port them to the screen, but maybe this is flying directly in the face of that.
If they wanted to do this, they could have called this like, well, and granted, I know that it's not a Sony property then, but there's the Dark Pictures anthology made by the same people who made Until Dawn, which is a series of smaller games like Until Dawn. If they wanted to spin it off into random, unique stories that kind of live in the video game world of Until Dawn and these other games, like, I don't know, then call it one of the Dark Pictures anthologies, the movie. Like, I don't understand tying it into Until Dawn. I don't know. I don't get it. It made me mad.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing. I really don't have a sense either of how this movie will do, but you may have been onto something, Nerdbomber, with the idea that they saw that people were going back and replaying and trying to get different endings, and they wanted to movieify that. But like, I think that's a flawed premise. I think you can't movieify everything. You can't movieify choice in that way. The reason that was fun for gamers and that gamers connected to it is because they were the ones making the choices. They weren't watching a writer make choices on behalf of characters, right? It just feels, the whole thing feels a little, I don't know, goofy, I guess I'll say. Will you guys watch this? Streaming or theater or just not watching it at all? I think I'll probably stream it at some point. This seems like it's coming out in April, late April. This will certainly have hit some streaming service by spooky time, and if I have that streaming service, I may very well give it a go, but I can't really imagine seeing it in theaters.
I'm probably not going to watch this. I don't like horror movies as it is. Because it was tied in, I was maybe going to, but now it doesn't seem like it's going to be tied in at all, so I don't really care.
Same.
Techtic, I appreciate having you here for what I imagine will be your final episode with the podcast, because you said that thing's name, which you're not supposed to do for those people that are listening that don't know.
I've never played the game. I was just trying to figure it out. She gave too many hints.
That is part of the lore of that creature, I believe. Is it just if you say its name one time, that's it? It's over? You're screwed? Or is it like Beetlejuice? Is it like 3 times?
No idea.
Do you remember?
I don't know, but now,
I'm asking Nerdbomber.
If it's one time, we're donezo. So it was nice knowing you.
She said she did a deep dive. I'm just kind of assuming at this point that you're dead, Techtic. So
I thought you basically saying the name
real.
Like started to summon them to you. I think the more you said it, the more they would come find you. Like, we're not in Appalachians or anything like that, so like I think we'll be okay, but you never know.
I think my final point here, which I kind of already made, is you should go play this game. This is a very good game. I have to imagine that it would hold up playing it now. And I'm looking on the PlayStation Store. It is $20, which is more than I thought it was going to be, but it's also included in PlayStation Plus Extra if you happen to have that. And it was really fun. It was really scary. Nerdbomber, did you finish this game? Because I'm actually kind of shocked by that.
I got probably like 75% of the way through, and then I was playing it in our like downstairs family room, and I got spooked. So then I stopped.
Yeah, there was a couple times playing this game and again, this would have been 7 or 8 years ago that I played this, and I can still remember specific scenes from this game as being particularly spooky. So if that's your thing, I would definitely recommend that you check it out. I believe they did a remaster of this game.
They did, and I think it came out fairly recently, like within the last year or so.
Yeah, that's on the PlayStation Store for $60, but I'll bet you them graphics are significantly improved. There's a comparison trailer, apparently, if you would like to watch it. So go check that out if you're interested, and I guess maybe check out the movie in April if you're so inclined. We're going to take a short break now before coming back to talk about Bluesky and what Bluesky is working on in light of recent social media happenings. But before we talk about that, before we take our break, Mr. Stephen Keller is coming on the show again soon, and that is one of his many benefits that he receives as a result of his support of the show. At the night level, which is the highest of our 3 levels of Patreon support, Stephen is a producer on this show. As a result, he gets this weekly shout out, of course, access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, input into the weekly game segment, the occasional guest spot on the show, and overall just being a cool guy. It's not a benefit that he directly receives from us, but I like to think it's just a general byproduct. So that's the night level. That's the highest of our 3 levels of support on Patreon. But there's also a Squire level of support, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and a page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. Secret segment for this month, we talked about which salad dressing we would most like to wear as a cologne. So if that's your kind of thing, or even if it's not, you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Consider giving back to the show, helping us keep this thing going and getting access to more of that juicy content. Again, that's patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Thanks again to Steven. We'll be right back to talk about Bluesky.
Let's see, Alex. What do you think of Jaws, which is at 97% Rotten Tomatoes?
I find it to be anti-shark propaganda. What do you feel about the Entourage movie, which is at a meager 33%?
I think they finally got Hollywood right. How about It Follows, 97%?
Worse than your parents giving you the sex is evil talk. do you feel about Juno, which is at 94%?
That would be a movie that celebrates a teenage homewrecker. How about Bewitched at 25%?
Best television adaptation ever put to film. How do you feel about American Hustle at a towering 93%?
Overwrought awards bait. Righteous Kill, 19%.
The movie that Michael Mann wishes he had made when he created Heat.
Sounds about right. I'm Julio.
I'm Alex, and we are the Contrarians.
As you can tell, our thing is that we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine.
Regardless of what we really feel.
Find us on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn,
Facebook, Twitter, we're everywhere.
All right, we are back to talk about Bluesky. Now, as you all know, this week has been an abnormal week for social media, and in particular for Meta and for TikTok, both kind of experiencing their own sets of challenges, a lot of them self-imposed. We talked a lot about TikTok last week. We'll probably talk about it a little bit again here. Meta, of course, is experiencing basically a constant PR crisis at this point. Enter Bluesky, or rather, I wouldn't say enter Bluesky because Bluesky's already been around, but Bluesky is doing the dang thing. They are seeing the mass exodus from Meta's social app ecosystem and are pushing to produce a new app powered by the AT protocol, the same thing that underpins Bluesky. They're making a new photo sharing app called Flashes. Now, Flashes is not currently live, nor is it in beta, but it's sounding like it's weeks, if not days, away from experiencing some level of a soft launch. Also worth noting, in the article on TechCrunch that discusses Flashes, there's also some talk of a video sharing app. That app has a funny name. I'm searching for it now. All the apps have funny names. First of all, did you know that Bluesky, apparently, like its predecessor was called Skeets? I assume because they also call tweets on Bluesky Skeets.
Little John and the East Side Boys were involved.
The video-only app that the guy who's making Flashes wants to launch will be eventually called Blue Screen, he says, which I also think is fantastic. You know, we talked last week a little bit about the TikTok thing. Since we talked about it, how do I put this? I would say a lot of things have happened that have, you know, people are back on TikTok now, but I think a lot of people that are back probably actively don't want to be there anymore because of some of the moves that have been made in the past few days. I think something that we kind of talked through a little bit last week is certainly equally true here, which is that the ground is fertile for someone to come along and supplant TikTok, take all of its users. I mean, we talked a little bit about Red Note last week too, I think, as people were literally learning Mandarin to try and basically accept the terms and conditions so that they could get on Red Note. You know, Bluesky seems to be, and you know, people like this guy who worked with Bluesky and are starting to produce new apps to again fill social media voids, being left by, you know, companies becoming more unsavory. Bluesky seems to be doing everything right. It's hard for me to imagine something like Flashes coming along and, you know, based on our collective experience with Bluesky, it not being done thoughtfully and with the users in mind. So, you know, for me, I'm a very pedestrian at best Instagram user. I have really, like, I think a handful of posts. I don't even think I have double digits posts on there. I really just go on there to watch reels and like watch other people's stories. So for me, my level of need from an app like that is very low. And I have to imagine something like Flashes could provide that.
See,
but yeah, go ahead.
While Flashes is good, a lot of it is now starting from zero for a lot of people. And so it's shaky, I guess would be the word to say, to see if the same communities are going to just pop up on this new option or if it'll even work the same way. So
you can spin that positively, though. You can take that same thing and turn it on its head. Some people want fresh starts.
Oh no, I don't disagree, right? Because it feels like they're maybe behind the curve on you know, TikTok, and this is a chance for them to maybe be first in line. I see it. I see what you're saying as an opportunity. What's interesting to me is the whole blue, I guess, stratosphere, we'll call it, is basically setting up to be this thing that can't be shut down and hopefully can never be just bought out. That's kind of why I moved over to Bluesky as a whole. So I'm hopeful to see that not only this pivot happens, but now people don't have to worry about this censorship and the controlling of our community voice. And call me cautiously optimistic, I guess.
I will say to that point, with my Blue Sky experience, under my belt and seeing the continued exodus to Blue Sky. Blue Sky is up to, I think, 28 million users now, in particular over the last few months, again, because of things that have happened with X. Like, the exodus has been pretty pronounced to the point that we're now seeing that most celebrities have a Blue Sky account. A lot of people still keep their X's, but they are moving over to Blue Sky. I think a lot of people with the intent to eventually leave X behind. I kind of wonder if we aren't entering a new age of social media where, I guess, what keeps Blue Sky from eventually becoming the same thing and having the same set of problems that X does, right? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not a social media scholar. I think the answer almost certainly has something to do with money, but
I think
I'm, in that sense, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
at this point in time, I feel like social media is not going to be what we once knew it to be. I feel like up until this point in history, social media was relatively ubiquitous. If you wanted to share photos, you went to Instagram. If you wanted to share videos, you went to TikTok. YouTube is kind of more like long form. I know they have YouTube Shorts, but that's not quite, like, that's not really considered social media in my eyes. If you wanted profiles, like, there was a battle at one point between MySpace and Facebook, but that kind of went away. And so it was just Facebook was the one. And I think now we have a splintering of all of these different sites. Like, Twitter was your place to do short form text posts. I think we're just going to see people splintering and fragmenting all over the internet. And I don't know if we're even going to have one single app anymore. I think TikTok becoming what it will become, who knows what it will become, whether it's shut down or turns into something completely different than what we know it to be. I think it's going to be a diaspora, and I don't think we're going to have a unifying social media experience anymore, really. I think, I hate saying these words because it feels like very like internet speak, but I do think we're going to have just almost like little echo chambers, whether it's echo chambers of your interests or your views. And I don't think people are going to necessarily cross over into other platforms. Like, they're going to find their space, their little hole on the internet, and they're going to stay there. And it's almost going to feel, in my opinion, kind of like back in the day when everybody just had like their own GeoCities page and like random internet forums, and you had your own little hole on the internet. Obviously at a much bigger scale, but I feel like it's just going to be like a lot of different forums now that people have found their niche, and there's not much crossover. You're kind of describing Reddit in a sense, right? Where I Reddit is a lot of things. I'm a lurker on Reddit. I don't really actively post there, but like Reddit is filled to the brim with echo chambers, most of which are, centered around specific hobbies, but there's also like taking politics, for example. There is r/politics, which is very left-wing, and then there's various other subreddits typically surrounding specific people that are aggressively right-wing, and people flock to typically one of those, and they are ensconced in their echo chamber.
Oh, I love my little Reddit
in some way
community.
Happy, right?
It's so friendly.
So, yeah, I mean, you can certainly cultivate a multifaceted community on Reddit pretty easily, but subreddits are those things, right? They are miniaturized echo chambers, and I think I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing in most contexts on Reddit. I'm just saying that that's a comparison that I can draw. Something that we haven't even really, we talked about Twitter/X, we've talked about Blue Sky. We haven't even talked about Threads. And I think that speaks a lot to your point, Nerdbomber, of like things are just kind of splintering and fracturing. I did not ever get on Threads. When Threads first came out, I was instructed by a few people or told by a few people that I should be on it. I'm still not on it, and I feel like I haven't really missed anything. And I don't know if you guys are on it. I think we might have had a podcast account on it.
We do.
We do.
But like,
in my opinion, so I've dabbled in all of them. Threads felt like the most populated for a while, but there's just as much spam and nonsense on Threads, and I feel like the same problems that I kind of have with Twitter, I am also having with Threads.
Sure.
Blue Sky feels a lot smaller, and
It is starting to get bots, though.
Blue Sky is also starting to get bots, and the algorithm.
Blue Sky is starting to get bots, but I think right now we are in a honeymoon period with Blue Sky where I think I agree with the point here, which is that bots and AI are, I think, a huge part of what's causing a lot of the problems we're talking about here. I think I've seen a lot of people on Blue Sky very aggressively calling out bots and getting them banned, and like I think the sense of community on Blue Sky right now, well, it's still a little bit smaller.
Well, that's the other
and
benefit.
Very
of...
positivity oriented. Like, it's still so strong that people are all willing to band together and just be like, this is a bot, get them out. We don't want them here. Whereas somewhere like Twitter or Threads, it's just kind of, everyone's a little bit more blasé about that because it's too late.
That's the other benefit of like Reddit, for example, because a lot of, at least my subreddits, you can't post unless you have a certain amount of karma. That's kind of the impetus to make sure that you don't have just like random bot accounts. And then on top of that, let's say those bot accounts built a bunch of karma. Well, then once they get found out as a bot, they just get downvoted to hell.
Right. Reddit is moderated to its credit, right? I mean, moderators exist on every subreddit, but like any given thread on Reddit is going to be self-moderated by people that see a bot say something that makes no sense and just, like you said, downvote it to oblivion. Whereas, Facebook it has become so completely overrun with bots now that you will see a picture posted by an AI account that was AI generated that makes no sense. That's basically a picture of nothing. And then you will see a million bots underneath it saying, looks great, or amen, saying things that no human would ever say to the photo that's in front of them. It's just bots interacting with other bots, right?
Which is hilarious.
Last I was on X, it was definitely headed in that direction as well, and you could see the signs. Blue Sky, I haven't seen anything like that yet. And granted, if you start seeing it, it's probably too late to save it. But like I said, my experience with Blue Sky so far has been that the whole bot and AI thing is being very aggressively policed by its user base in a manner similar to Reddit, in the sense that it's such a tight-knit community that cares deeply about what Blue Sky is trying to do, that I have a little bit more faith than is typical that we may be able to keep it cleaner over there, at least for a little while. As it gets bigger, that's going to get harder and harder, though. There's no doubt about that. And, getting back to flashes and the eventual blue screen, like, I think what they will need to succeed to that point is a similar groundswell of like, a community that is focused on an app that is more focused on positivity, while delivering the same features as other apps that have, to put it lightly, made a lot of bad PR decisions and also just like done a lot of outright evil seeming things. So we'll see what happens with this. Flashes, like I said, it's not even out yet. It's not even in beta. Blue screen, it seems like it's just a twinkle in this guy's eye. But the AT protocol has already been proven to be fairly effective in that it's basically what Blue Sky is built around. So I certainly have faith in those things eventually coming to fruition, but how successful they are probably remains to be seen at this point. So yeah, flashes coming soon, hopefully. I guess we'll see. And social media is a hellscape, just to kind of close the loop on that conversational topic. Let's move into more positive territory. Let's talk about what we've been up to in our weekly segment referred to as What Are You Up To Wednesday? This is part of the show where we talk about what we've been up to. And the show typically comes out on Wednesday. So what are you up to Wednesday? I went first last week. I'm almost sure of it. So this week I'm going to not go first. And I'm going to turn things over to Nerdbomber to go first and let us know what's going on in her neck of the woods.
So I have been reading Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and that is pretty much all I've been doing. Third book, it's like a fantasy, romantasy, I guess, book, novel series. Got really big on Book Talk. I received them as gifts for Christmas, and I've been plucking through them, and they're pretty good. I mean, I'm not going to say it's an epic fantasy by any means. Like, if you're expecting something like Game of Thrones, you're looking in the wrong place. This is like a mild version, like a more entertaining bubblegum version of that sort of thing. It's honestly kind of reminds me a little bit of Aragon in a way. Not completely, but a little bit. And at this point in time, that's kind of what my brain needs. So I am enjoying reading those. The third book actually comes out at midnight tonight, the day that we're recording this on the 20th. And I do have that pre-ordered. It is coming, I think, my copy got delayed till Thursday, but that's fine because I'm still plucking my way through the second book. I don't know why plucking is the word I'm using, but that is what I'm going with. So that's pretty much been what I've been doing. Honestly, I can't think of anything else that we've really been up to. Oh, that's right. We watched Mufasa. I forgot about it because I was kind of disappointed in it.
Yeah, you're going to feel validated, Illeagle. This was not that good.
The story, And what they were trying to do, I wanted so badly to be good.
It could have been. It had so much potential.
It did. But the music was bad. This was a Lin-Manuel Miranda.
He wrote
thing.
Sorry.
We're talking over each other a little bit here, but we're that flabbergasted. Like, there was one song where the villain is like,
bye-bye
over and over. And I'm just like, this is not intimidating. This doesn't even feel like the vibe of the original Lion King movies. I'm not sure what's going on here. It completely takes you out of the movie. Like, the music was so cringy and not great.
And I want to mention who Lin-Manuel is. He wrote the music for Encanto, which was amazing.
Hamilton, I mean,
like,
don't reduce him to just Encanto. Like, he's very well known. He's written a lot of great music, and this is just not his best show.
Felt AI generated.
It really did. And even the storyline, like, I know they had to get where they were going in the end, but I don't want to give anything away, but the main beef between Mufasa and Scar felt really reductive, and I feel like they could have made it way more complex, but it felt really reductive, and it was just a little disappointing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Techtic, I like how you immediately, I think it's funny you immediately said that, like, I'm going to feel validated.
I was so upset. The main
this.
reason why I was upset, I was like, he's going to give us an I told you so.
No, I'm not going to give you an I told you so. I mean, I'm sure that when we talked about this on the show, because I believe we did talk about it on the show, I'm sure I said something to that effect, but, like, I also just didn't feel as strongly about it as I do about things that I've watched and, like, franchises that I actually deeply care about. So, like, you're free to feel how you like. I think your opinion of what my attitude would be on it is correct, but
the whole thing felt just very AI generated, and it was so disappointing. Like, Nerdbomber's right.
Yeah.
There is a story beat there. It has potential, and they whiffed it. Like, anyway, sorry to speak up in your what are you up to. It's just, I was excited to talk about
soulless profiteering is what it sounds like. Anything else to share, Nerdbomber? That was a nice little cheery note to end on.
Yeah, that was it.
I'm going to go next. I am going to toot my horn because I'm proud of something that I did. If you've been listening to this show for any length of time, or if you know me as a person, as these two lovely co-hosts of mine do, you know that I often have a hard time purchasing things. It's just a dead thing about me that I just have a hard time doing.
And he bought Hades.
And I did not buy Hades. Nice one. No, I bought 2 games for a grand total of like $10. I bought a game called Deliver Us the Moon, and also a game called Blasphemous. I haven't started Blasphemous yet, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. I did start Deliver Us the Moon over the weekend, and I've got mixed feelings on it so far. This is a game that it's ostensibly an adventure puzzle game. You play as a single, you're the sole astronaut that's sent to the moon to try and understand what happened at a research base there that was designed to deliver clean energy back to Earth because Earth went through an energy crisis. I don't know if that sounds familiar to anyone. And so basically we're trying to save the world by quote unquote delivering the moon. And, it alternates between first person and third person. I have probably about an hour worth of play under my belt so far, so not a whole lot, maybe an hour and a half. There have been a couple of puzzles that I've encountered. None of them have been particularly taxing, but nevertheless pleasing. I think the game overall has some good bones. It's building a story that I can appreciate even without knowing where it's going to lead. I think the game fancies itself as being this epic cinematic experience that I'm not super sure that it has proven to me yet that it is. It still has a chance to do so, but right now it hasn't really delivered so much on that promise. So I'm hoping for a little bit more from it in that regard, but I'm certainly going to keep playing it. It's fairly lightweight. It is a PS5 game. I'm back on the PS5, and I got it for $3.24 or something, and I think that deal is still active as of the release of this episode, so you should go check it out if you're interested in what I just said. Other than that, the only other piece of news I have from my life is that Severance came back, so I am watching Severance again. Season 2, the first episode just came out this past weekend, watched it immediately, and that show still has its pitch, so I intend to watch it weekly when the episode drops until Season 2 is over. So, shout out to that show. Techtic, that leaves us with you to close things out.
All right, so in addition to watching Mufasa, I also started a new D&D campaign with some friends. Pretty excited. I'm my character. I'm trying to not play like the heroic character that can have the most abilities. I'm trying to play a more like could be a strong character, but guess what? They've got flaws. to add some chaos into this, so I'm excited to see how it plays out. I am a Harengon sorcerer, which is a dangerous combination. However, I have a drug addiction, so I'm very easily swayed by the premise of drugs, and I will sell out my companions for a bump. Is the personality type that I'm going for. So excited to see how that pans out. Just getting started, and I'll let you guys know how I like it.
Very good. Well, that brings us to Quiztown, and as you all know who listened last week,
It's me.
the mayor of Quiztown this week is Nerdbomber. Nerdbomber is 1-1 on the quiz tracking, so she is actually not the top dog right now. Top dog is our boy Techtic, who is trying to maintain his supremacy today. He is 1-0. Nerdbomber 1-1, and I am 0-1 on the year so far, so I'm looking to get in the game here with the topic to be announced by Nerdbomber at this very minute. So without further ado, Nerdbomber, the floor is yours.
All right, you guys are going to love this one. The trivia this week is Balatro.
I don't know what that is.
I should be good at this, but I'm a little bit scared.
I thought I would get more resounding like, oh yeah, but I didn't get that. So, well, here we are. So for the listening public, as always, this is going to be Price is Right style trivia. So there's going to be 5 numeric questions. These guys have to guess and try to get as close to the answer without going over. Otherwise, they bust. And they each have 1 lifeline. They can +1 the other person or use the number 1. And they can do that once a week. So Techtic, since you're the leading man, you get to go first because I believe that gives Illeagle more benefits throughout the game. Correct?
I think so.
Okay. How many different Jokers are there in the latest release of Balatro?
I thought there was 32.
Significantly more. I'm going to double it and say 64, but I think it's more than even that. I'm just kind of playing it a little safe here.
All right. So as of update 1.0.1n-full, there are 150 total Jokers of varying rarities. So Illeagle takes that one.
Sounds about right.
All right. So how many copies of the game were sold in the first 3 days of launch?
This is an interesting question because this strikes me as the kind of game that didn't necessarily have an immediate, like, wow kind of thing. It might have established word of mouth over time. I'm going to say 200,000. I really have no idea.
So that depends. So it depends. I wish I knew the history of how it was released, because a lot of times these indie developers will hype their game on forums and kind of self-promote in addition to getting a publisher and getting that bonus promotion. 200,000 feels like a strong guess to me, but I think she's tricking us, so I'm going to say 25.
Okay, so Illeagle takes this one as well with a very close answer. 250,000 copies, give or take, were sold in the first 3 days.
I don't know what to say. I was feeling it.
Yeah, it felt like the perfect guess, honestly.
Okay, so the nest egg achievement that you can get in the game is awarded for having how much money or more during a run?
$120.
121.
And he has won it using his +1 to great effect.
He
It
was
is awarded
dead serious this
for
whole game.
having $400. So I'll do the other 2 questions just because I created them.
We're done.
No. All right. So one of the secret hands is the Flush 5, where you play 5 cards of the same rank and suit. What is the base chip value for this hand?
You play 5 cards of the same rank and suit.
Yeah.
So you could play like 5 ace of
it's
spades.
It's got to be like the base chip value's got to be like 250 or something. It's got to be huge. 250.
251.
You both busted 160. So
Okay. Well, we were in the ballpark.
Techtic is on his way to being swept. There's
Sick.
one more question though. How many
This is how it
possible
starts, by the way.
how many possible seeds are there in Balatro?
No, wait. What's a seed?
So you know how at the end of your game it gives you a code that you could input in to
That?
play? So how many seeds?
Oh,
Unique
fuck.
different types of games.
Jesus. This is 1e to the 9, I think.
Can you give me that in words?
1e to the 9, I think, would be 1 trillion. It's a strong guess. It's an enormous number. I'm going to say 1 billion. I'm going to undercut him, even though I think it's probably wrong.
All right, so Techtic saved himself from getting swept. There are 2,821,109,907,456 different seeds in Balatro.
Obviously.
Well, guys, that was the, 3rd week of the year. And guess what? As far as quizzes are concerned, we've accomplished nothing. We're all 1-1. at this point, which I maybe should have seen coming as a potential outcome of this quiz. But what this means is that next week I will host, and it's basically like we're starting over. So get hyped for that. If you liked what you listened to, you can head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review. Hit us up on Bluesky at the handles we mentioned previously in the episode, and consider heading over to our Patreon, patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast, and, consider getting involved in making this show. So thanks to all of our Patreons, thanks to all of our listeners, and if you liked what you listened to, go tell your friends. Stay safe, keep on podcasting. We'll see you next week.